Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up number 2, and this will be for the week of July 6th to July 12th. During this week I finished 3 books, so this should be a relatively short video, although I am going to talk about some of the books that I'm currently reading, just so next week's video is not absurdly long. Let's just get right into the books that I read this week. The first of which was The Voting Booth by Brandi Colbert. I received this as an e-arc from Disney Hyperion through NetGalley, so thank you so much to both the publisher and NetGalley for providing me with this free copy. This came out on the 7th of July, so it is now available, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars, would highly recommend, and I actually plan to do a dual Tale of Two Stories review, which I know I've only done one of those so far on my channel, but I do want to do more with this and Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed, which are both political-centric, political activism-themed YA contemporaries. So I'm going to talk more about my thoughts on The Voting Booth in that video, which should be coming up in the next couple weeks, but I did give this book 4 stars and would really recommend it. The next one that I read, I'm also not going to talk about that much in this video, which was Lanny by Max Porter. I read this for the BookTube Prize semifinals, which are ending on July 30th, so coming up this month, and I will be talking about this book as well as all the other books that I read for this round of the BookTube Prize in a video at the end of the month. So you will hear all of my thoughts and my rating and everything during that video, but I can't talk about them now. But I did finish this book this week, and I also listened in part to the audiobook. Then for the only book that I actually can talk about in this video that I finished this week, we have My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So I read this with my virtual book club that I do with 2 of my best friends from college, and all 3 of us really enjoyed this book. So this is kind of touted as a modern classic. So this was originally published in Italian in 2012 and published in English by Europa Editions, and it was translated by Anne Goldstein, who is pretty well known now for translating Elena Ferrante's books, as well as a lot of other books by Italian writers of note. So in this novel, we follow 2 girls, Elena and Layla. Elena is our narrator, and then Layla is one of her closest friends, growing up during the mid-20th century in a poor neighborhood in Naples, Italy. So in this first novel, we meet Elena and Layla at around 6 years old. They are starting in primary school, and they become friends over kind of a course of events. And we continue to follow them in this novel up until they are 16. So in this particular novel, she focuses a lot of her attention on kind of their struggles to get an education, as well as kind of their growing and developing relationship and kind of the way in which their friendship changes over the course of these 10 years of their early life. So this one, as I said previously, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It was a very slow-going novel. I read it over the course of, I think, about 2 weeks, so it took me a bit longer than some novels, especially for a novel of this length, but I do think that was in part because Ferrante does not spare any detail in providing you with this so well-rendered picture of what Elena and Layla's life were like during this time. I should note, actually, that Elena Ferrante is a pseudonym. She is an anonymous author and no one quite knows who she is. However, there have been some instances that showcase that this may be somewhat of an autobiographical work, as Elena Ferrante, in kind of print interviews, has suggested that she also grew up in Naples, I believe, around the same time. So people do think that this is somewhat autobiographical in nature. But in kind of describing the story, Elena Ferrante really provides a beautiful amount of detail and creates such vivid characters and settings and also experiences that I think are quite universal, which is in part why this book is so loved. The way that Elena Ferrante, in talking about Elena and Layla's friendship, captures both the love and the pride and happiness, as well as the jealousy and anger and envy that you feel in a relationship and a friendship, especially when you are a fairly young girl or even kind of growing into your young adulthood with a really close female friend, I think is so viscerally rendered in this book and just very true to form. I think part of what people love about this book is that it really does feel like a friendship that is very close and very complicated and continues to complexify as our lives continue to complexify. So I really appreciated that, and I also really enjoyed reading this with some friends that I really love and am very close to, because I think we all could agree that those experiences that are talked about in terms of female friendship are really accurately depicted. I think there is one kind of issue that I had with the novel that wasn't even really an issue, it was just something that I struggled with a bit, which was the sheer number of people that are in this novel. There are a lot of characters. In fact, there's a whole index of characters at the beginning that spans over 3 pages. And Elena Ferrante really brings in these characters at a number of different times. They enter and leave the girls' lives quite frequently. And so sometimes it was confusing as to like who the characters were and kind of what we knew about them. And there was actually a point in which I conflated 2 characters that were very distinct. They should not have been conflated in my mind, but just because they had slightly similar names and I wasn't quite as familiar with the names because they are all Italian, I got them confused, and that caused some confusion towards the end of the novel, but I did figure that out. So I did repeatedly come back to that index of characters just to make sure that I was like sure that whoever was being spoken about was the person that I thought they were. So that was the one kind of issue that I had with the novel, but other than that, I've like really enjoyed it and definitely plan to continue reading in this series. I actually just a couple days ago, actually just yesterday, got a used copy of the second book, which is The Story of a New Name, from one of my local used bookstores here in Atlanta, and so I'm really excited to be getting to this, and I definitely will be getting to it very soon. This one's much longer. I think it's about 100 pages longer than My Brilliant Friend, but I am still really excited about this one. And yeah, I think that is everything. I am definitely anticipating that the next 3 books will become even more like heart-wrenching and tragic than this first one was, so I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for that, but I also am very excited. So yeah, really enjoyed My Brilliant Friend. If you've not read it, I feel like I'm very late to the game in reading My Brilliant Friend, but if you've not read it, I would highly recommend it, especially if you are a woman who has had some like long-term female friendships. I think it is a really valuable novel, potentially to read with friends as well. So those are all the books that I finished this week. I also wanted to mention, since this video was going to be relatively short, just a couple of my thoughts on some of the books that I'm currently reading, just so next week's video, when I wrap up all of these 6 books, is not absurdly long. So I'm just going to quickly go through the 6 books that I'm reading, and then this video will be done. So, I am also hoping that these 6 books that I'm currently reading will all be wrapped up by the start of the reading rush, which happens the week after next. It starts on July 20th, and I will actually be filming my reading rush TBR right after this, so it should be going up at some point early this week. And yeah, so let's get into the books that I'm currently reading. So the one that I'm furthest along in is Chintu by Jennifer Manson Bukomakumbi. I'm reading this for my African Women Writers Project, and I only have about 100 pages left. I'm enjoying it. I'm not loving it, but I do think there'll be a lot to discuss in that video, and that should also be going out at some point this week, although I'm not quite sure when, since I haven't finished this book yet. But be sure to look out for my review and discussion of this at some point during this week. Next up, we have Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. This one, I'm about halfway, a little less than halfway, done with it, and it was originally going to be a buddy read that I was doing with Lindsay from Lindsay's Book Life. Unfortunately, Lindsay decided to DNF the book at about 80 pages, and honestly, I don't think I'm far behind her. Neither of us particularly enjoyed this book, and while I have read now about 160 pages, I still am really not getting on with it, which is especially unfortunate because 2 of my best friends in real life absolutely love this book and like were really excited that I was going to read it, and I just am really not enjoying it. So this one follows 2 very pretentious people, Lotto and Mathilde, who almost immediately upon meeting at the end of their like time in college end up getting married, and this book follows their marriage over the course of about 20 years. And I think it also is about kind of the breakdown of their marriage after a certain point. And I think, well, I don't necessarily hate books that are about people I don't like, I do have to like actively feel feelings towards them, even if those feelings are like hatred or annoyance at kind of their antics. But with this book, they're just like so pretentious that I don't even care about them. Like, and I don't quite know if that's the point, but if it is, I also don't really like that. So I think what's happening right now in this first part of the novel is we're getting Lotto's side of like the story and the marriage, and then in the second half of the novel we'll get Mathilde's side of the story and the marriage. And unless there's a major like tonal shift or I really change my mind about Mathilde and how I feel about her, I just don't think this book is going to redeem itself for me or provide me any kind of insights into anything. Because I just am not, I don't care about these people, and I don't care about how pretentious they are, and I don't care that Lotto's a playwright. Like, I just do not care about anything that's happening in this book. So I think unless there is something major that happens that like gets me to care about anyone in this book, I don't think I'm going to finish it. But I will keep you updated. Next week I'll let you know if I've ended up finishing it or if I DNF'd it. But yeah, not a fan of this right now, and I think Lindsay made a very smart choice. So there's that one. So then on a lighter and happier note, I'm about a third of the way through One to Watch by Kate Stayman London. This is a romance novel that follows our main character B, who is a plus-size woman who's a fashion blogger who, after bashing a like bachelorette type show, ends up as the main lead to try to redeem the show, because after her bashing, the show completely tanked in terms of viewership. So she is now the lead of the main squeeze. And I don't think I've ever said this on my channel because it's not something I talk about very frequently, but I am a huge fan of the bachelorette whole situation. I think they are hilarious, highly entertaining television, which is saying a lot coming from me who doesn't really like television that much or doesn't really ever watch it. I just find them so funny. I've enjoyed so much spending time with friends and like talking about how stupid the shows are, and I do think they have some very interesting kind of social commentary that I don't think is intentional at all about America and its like fame hungriness and just like the absurd individualism of America that really just like is peak comedy and meta social commentary that I don't think the show is even realizing it's making. So I love watching the shows and I love thinking about them. So when I heard that this was a romance that's both kind of for fans of The Bachelor and Bachelorette, but also pushing back on a lot of the narratives that it perpetuates, I was super excited and I am really enjoying this one so far. B is a really enjoyable and also complex romance main character in that she is very kind of body positive and self-confident, but she also still has a lot of like self-esteem issues and is working through a lot herself. And so I think that's been really fun to kind of see in the romance world. So yeah, really enjoying this one. And then I'm also reading 2 books on my Kindle. The first of which is another e-arc that was sent to me from Grove Atlantic through NetGalley, obviously. So thank you so much to both of them for sending this along. And that is Crooked Hallelujah by Kelly Jo Ford. This is actually out this Tuesday, July 14th. So coming out very soon, and I am hoping to finish it by July 14th. And this is a debut novel that's set from the 1970s to the 1990s on the Cherokee Reservation in Oklahoma. Kelly Jo Ford is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, so this is like an own voices representation of reservation life. And it's kind of halfway between a novel and a collection of interconnected short stories in that each chapter is kind of a short story, but they're following the same characters through time. And I'm about 25% of the way through this one, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I think, while I usually like interconnected short story collections, I do think the short stories in this novel don't quite stand up on their own as like pieces of short fiction, in that you kind of need the other context of the short story, of the like other short stories surrounding them. However, they also don't flow as well as chapters in a novel would. So I'm not sure. I'm going to reserve judgment since I'm only a quarter of the way through this, and it does sound from the description to be really engaging. I just don't know if I will end up finding it to be kind of as emotionally connected and as cohesive as I potentially want it to be by the end of the novel. But as I said, this one does come out this Tuesday, so I'm hoping to finish it by Tuesday and put up my NetGalley review on Goodreads. So if you want to follow me on Goodreads, I always put my Goodreads profile down in the description box below. You can find out kind of my thoughts, and then obviously I'll talk about it next week as well. Additionally, on my Kindle, I'm also reading Sea Wife by Amity Gage. This is a literary fiction mystery novel that I'm also about a quarter of the way through. And this one I really only wanted to read because I love the cover, and so I requested it from my library, and it came pretty quickly. So this one, as I said, is kind of a literary mystery, and it follows a young family who the father / husband of the family decided that he wanted to take a year kind of away from their life in the upper middle class world of Connecticut to take a year-long sailing trip around the Caribbean with their 2 young children who are about 18 months old and like 4 years old, I think. So, you know, a terrible idea, basically, in summary. And so at some point in this sea adventure, it appears that the husband either died or went missing. We don't really know what has happened to him, except that he's no longer with the family at the start of the novel. And then the novel is told in 2 perspectives. So the main perspective is the wife's perspective. I don't remember anyone's name, sorry. The wife's perspective which is in the present day after she and the children have made it back to Connecticut and something terrible has happened. And she's dealing with kind of the ramifications of that, but also prior to them going on the sailing trip was also dealing with a lot of depression. And then we also follow the husband's perspective through his captain logs that are happening over the course of the sea journey. So as I said, I'm only about 25% of the way through this one. I am intrigued about what happened to him. He seems to be not a great guy, so there's that. But I do find it a little slow going, especially because it's less than 300 pages and it's a mystery, and yet I'm reading it very, very slowly. I think the chapters are kind of long, and so that might be, I really hate long chapters. But anyway, so that one is going well as well, and I should finish it by next week. And then the last one that I just started last night is another BookTube prize book, which is Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. Again, can't talk about this really at all, but it is a multi-generational family story. It's less than 200 pages though, which people kind of frequently talk about how it is this like multi-generational story, and yet it's so short. And this one follows families through unexpected pregnancy and the child that follows. 2 different social classes are joined together. Book opens in 2001, and then I think it goes back in time. Yeah, it goes back in time. So I'm excited about reading this one, but I can't really say my thoughts. And then I also do still have to read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, which is the last book in my set of BookTube prize reading that I haven't read, but I ordered a copy and it should be coming in the next couple days. So I will read that hopefully also before the reading rush starts, because I don't want to read it during the reading rush. So that is everything. As always, if you've read any of these books or are now interested in them, please put a comment down in the comment section below. Additionally, if you are new to my channel, please give me a subscribe, and I think that is everything. Have a great start to your week or rest of your week whenever you end up watching this, and I will see you next time.